Bootstrap contains a set of classes that increase the left margin of any given cell. And just like you use columns to determine or define the width of the cell itself, you can use columns to define the width of that margin as well. And the good news is that these can be set on a breakpoint by breakpoint basis. So by using the extra small version or the small, medium, large, or extra large, you can achieve any layout on just about any device. All right, so to get started here, let's go ahead and add a new HTML page to our existing project and call this column offsets. And the first thing I want to do is grab our template content and paste it into our new file. And then I'm going to eliminate all of the cells within that first row, and we'll start over again by creating a new cell. And in here, I'm going to say that this has no offset so that we can start with a clean slate and kind of do a comparison. I do want to use my cell class that I defined inside of my template, and then I want to give this particular cell a column of extra small, 2 columns wide. All right. Now this one has no offset, but let's add one that does have a 2-column offset. So here what we'll do is change up the text. So 2-column, or I should just say offset by 2. And here what I'm going to do is add a column XS-offset, and you can see that I have options from 0 to 12, and I'll create a offset of 2 columns. Now notice also, as we get started here, that every single breakpoint size has its own set of those offset classes from 0 to 12. And I may not feature them all here, but just know that that's the pattern that you use. The word column, dash the size, the breakpoint that you want to work with, the term offset, and then the number of columns you want to use for the offset. All right. And then just to kind of make this a more complete example, I'm going to offset by 4, and then we'll jump all the way up to offset by 10 so that we can kind of see these all in action. So let's change that to offset 4 and then offset 10. And save what we have so far and run it. And you can see that we get the desired effect. The first row has no offset in that first cell. The next one is offset by in exactly 2 columns, 4 columns, and then 10 columns, putting us all the way on the right border of our container. All right, and you can see that these settings apply not only in the extra small size, but all the way up through the extra large size. So anything that we set will cascade to the larger sizes, and we'll talk about the problem that might introduce in just a moment here. But before we do that, let's talk about the fact that you'll notice that this is only one cell and it only takes up 2 columns by itself, but it's actually taking up a total of 12 columns because of the offset that's included inside of it. So here we have an offset of 10 plus the column size itself is 12. We couldn't fit anything else in this row if we wanted to, otherwise it'll kind of move down to the next row. So just be aware that offsets do contribute to the overall width of the cell as it applies to the row. However, I will say this, you can utilize offsets not just on the first cell of a given row, but on all of the cells in a given row. So here I'm creating a cell that's 2 and offset by 2, but then I'm going to jump over 2 more columns and create another 2-column cell. So let's see that in action. And you can see down here we have more of a checkerboard effect, all right, here in this bottom new row that we've added by giving us a 2-column offset, then the cell of 2, then 2-column offset, then the cell of 2, all right. So you can apply offsets multiple times inside of a given row. Furthermore, as we noted earlier, there are offsets for different breakpoint sizes, and you need to be aware that these have a cascading effect. So, for example, let's take the row that I have currently on my clipboard here, and let us add a new offset. Actually, let's add it inside of a row. So class equals row. Let's paste that in there. And so now let's go ahead and only define this at the small size, like so, to begin with. And then in the next row, what I'll do is say, hey, I actually want this to take up, in the medium size, I want this to take up 6 columns, but I don't change the offset from the small. Let's see what happens in that case. So, okay, so here we are. Let's go back down to the small size. And in the small size, you can see we have our cell offset by 2. And as we increase the size, we do get our new medium width, but you can see that because we defined an offset in the small breakpoint size, it still applies to medium, and it will apply also to large and extra large. But what if I don't want the offset for the medium? I want no offset whatsoever. In that case, then I'm going to need to kind of overlay it with another offset. So I can go call.md offset, and then I can set it to 0, for example, if I want no offset for the medium size, only for the small size. So let's go ahead and see that in action. All right, and you can see how it's moved over. It's at the bottom, and now it's moved all the way over to the left-hand side. Okay, so that's why you would use multiple column offsets for the various breakpoint sizes if you needed to reset them, because they will cascade from the smallest size that you create to the largest size of the largest breakpoint. The final thing that I'll talk about is the margins that you create to the right. And although you don't really think of it in those terms, to create a margin that is on the right-hand side, you just define fewer columns for a given row. So let's take, for example, this row here, and I want it to be 2 columns from the right towards the left. So how would I do that? Well, I would simply define the offset as 8. So 8 plus 2 would be 10, and that would give us 2 shy of 12, meaning that this would be pushed offset from the right by 2. So let's go ahead and see that in action. And, you know, it's essentially just this, doing the math to get everything, the margins essentially to work going the other direction. You just need to work your way from the left towards your right, and then backtrack from there to get the correct margin essentially from the right-hand side. Okay. So I think we have pretty much exhausted everything we can talk about with regards to column offsets. It's a great tool to help you lay out and to create different layouts for your given breakpoints. And we'll continue with some other similar kinds of utility classes like that in the next video. We'll see you there. Thanks.